This is a review for the Module 3 quiz in Math 990. Okay, we're just going to look at a few of these. We're given these points. We need to find the equation of this line in the form y equals mx plus b. So whenever you're given 2 points, the first thing you need to do is you have to find the slope. Okay, so let's go ahead. We can use our slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If it's easier, go ahead and label these points x1, y1, x2, y2, and then we'll just substitute them in. So we have 2 for y2 minus, make sure you do parentheses for that -9 so you remember to add that negative. X2 is 0 minus 8. So 2 minus a -9, we get 2 plus 9 or 11. And I'm just going to check that, make sure that's right. Yeah, 2 minus -9, 11. 0 minus 8 is -8. Now, we could do the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We could plug one of the points and use the slope, but I'll admit the slope is kind of ugly. So is there an easier way we can do this? Well, I'm noticing this point. This point is 0, 2. Do you remember when we're talking about y-intercepts that the value is always x? So that means in this case, our y-intercept is that point 0, 2. I know that because x equals 0. If x equals 0, this is the y-intercept. So we can just plug it in. So we can just say, okay, y equals m, which is that -11/8, x, and then plus 2. That was so much easier than plugging it into the formula. Now this will work, but if you plug it into the formula, it will also work. It might get a little bit ugly, but it'll work out. So, okay, determine the slope of the lines passing through the 2 points. Really similar to what we did, only don't take it as far. You get to stop when you find the slope. Okay, let's look at number 3. Consider the equation 7x plus 8y equals 24. What would a line parallel to that have, or a line perpendicular? Well, we know the slopes are related. If they're parallel, they're the same. If they're perpendicular, they're negative reciprocals. So first thing we need to do is find the slope. So let's solve for y. We'll minus 7x from both sides. So we get 8y equals, I'm going to make it a negative 7x out front, plus 24. So notice I'm keeping the signs in front of each term. I need to divide by 8 to every single term. So those 8's cancel. I get y equals negative 7/8 x, 24 over 8 simplifies to 3. So this is that same equation just solved for y. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I know if I have y equals mx plus b, if it's in that form, if it's solved for y, I can just look at the number in front of x to find the slope. So in this case, what would the slope be? Well, it would be negative 7/8. So m equals negative 7/8. So for a line parallel, we know it has the same slope, so it would just be negative 7/8. Now perpendicular is going to be the negative reciprocal. So since this is negative, we know the perpendicular slope has to be positive. And then we just flip it. So we'll have positive 8 over 7. There's no negative sign there. So that's our answer. So negative 7/8 for parallel, positive 8/7 for perpendicular. Okay, we're not going to do this one. Determine the slope of the line, similar to that first one. Find the equation of the line passing through. Let's go ahead and do this, number 5. So we're going to find the slope. I'm not going to label this one, but if you want to, you're welcome to. So I'll just do y2 minus y1, 0 minus 3, over x2 minus x1, so 3 minus, I've got that negative 3, so I'm going to add in the parentheses. So 0 minus 3, we get negative 3, over 3 plus 3, which is 6. This simplifies to negative 1/2. So now I'm going to use my point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now I can choose either of these 2 points to use. I've got to use my slope that I just found of -1/2, and I'm just going to use 3, 0. Let's hope something cancels out, right? So we have y minus y1, which is 0, equals m -1/2 times x minus x1, or x minus 3. Okay, I'm going to distribute that in. So minus 0 is just gone. I get y equals -1/2 x. Remember, you can put the 3 over 1, so those multiply. Negative times a negative gives me plus 3 over 2. If this one's complicated, don't be afraid to take these out separate, like -1/2 times -3 over 1, and work it out to the side and then bring it back in once you have the answer. Okay, so that's it. We found the slope, we put it into point slope form, used our slope, used one of the points, solved for y, simplified, and so that would be the final answer. Case 6. We are given this function. We need to calculate the following values. So basically what you're doing is you're just substituting in these values. Something very important here, make sure that you use parentheses when you have a negative number. Let me show you why. So if we have -1, this equals x squared, or -1 squared, plus 8 times -1 minus 3. So -1 squared, if you remember, equals -1 times -1. That gives us a positive 1. What if we didn't have the parentheses there? What would have happened? Well, it would have just been a -1. So make sure you use parentheses, especially when you're substituting in a negative number. So now we have plus 8 times -1, which is minus 8, minus 3. Now we work from left to right, now that we're just left with adding and subtracting. So 1 minus 8, we get -7 minus 3, which is -10. And I will let you do the other two. Okay, let's look at 7. We need to graph this. F of x equals -1/2 x minus 1. So we can first start by replacing f of x with y. So we get y equals -1/2 x minus 1. Because this is written with y equals, we know it's in slope-intercept form. And so the way I would graph this is by finding the slope and the y-intercept. So the slope here would just be -1/2. My y-intercept would be -1, which also is the point 0, -1. So I'd put that point right here. You want to graph your y-intercept first, and then from that point use your slope to find the next point. So we'd go down 1 because it's negative, but then right 2. Down 1, right 2. We could even do the opposite, go up 1, but then we have to go left 2. So notice when I draw this line, it's got to be a negative slope because my slope's negative, so it's got to be going in a negative direction, which it is. So again, we found our slope first, found our y-intercept. When we graph it, we do y-intercept first and then use slope to find the next points. Okay. I've talked about parallel and perpendicular. Let's look at this one. We have a $170 gift card for gas. We spend an average $17 per week for gas. Write a function of this model where W is the number of weeks and G of W is the value in dollars remaining. So we know we spend $17 per week on gas, and we have $170. Okay. So I switched this problem just to give you a different one to work on. So we have a $210 gift card. We spend an average of $19 per week. So we need to write a function where W is the number of weeks, G of W is the value remaining. So we know we started with 210, right? And every week we have to take off $19. So we're doing minus 19 for every week. This is going to represent how much is left on the gift card. Okay? And then to evaluate it, we'll just put 6 in for 19 and see how much is left. Okay, plot these points. I'm going to let you do that one. Just make sure you're careful with how you're plotting. If we graph the line of the equation of the line on this one, if you're stuck, remember you can go and just substitute in not for x, but y values. We can say like -3, -1, 0. Well, whatever we put in for y, what is x still going to equal? It's still going to equal 3. So if y is -3, x equals 3. If it's -1, if it's 0, and you can see no matter what it is, so the line x equals 3 is just going to be right through that point. You can always use an XY chart if that's confusing. Okay. We talked about evaluating. Make sure when you're evaluating these, just use the order of operations. This one, these problems might look intimidating, but just read them carefully. Make sure you're substituting in for the correct space, and then make sure you put in the decimals carefully as you solve. Okay, this one. So if we need to find x and y intercepts, this is another way we can find points to graph. So that means x and y intercepts, we're putting in 0 for x and 0 for y. So if we put in 0 for x, we'd have 2 times 0 plus 5y equals 30. 2 times 0 just cancels, so we have 5y equals 30. Divide by 5. So y is just going to equal 6. Okay, at the, did I say the y-intercept? That's what I meant, the y-intercept. The x-intercept, we have y equals 0. So same thing, we'll just say 2x plus, but now 0 in for y, equals 30. That cancels, I get 2x equals 30. Divide by 2 on each side. So x will just equal 15. So you can plug those in accordingly. But yeah, when they're asking for x and y intercepts, that's how you can find it. The x-intercept, we know x is 0, and the y-intercept, I think I said that wrong 2 times now. So the x-intercept, I'm just going to draw it to make sure there's no confusion. The x-intercept is on the x-axis, and this is where y equals 0. Okay, so 15 is the x-intercept. All right, so that's where x equals 15 and y equals 0. The y-intercept is on the y-axis, and that's where x equals 0. And so this one is at 0, 6. So where y equals 6, this is the y-intercept. It's where it crosses the y-axis. I apologize if I said that wrong a couple times. Okay, 18. Okay, let's look at 19. This might be our last one we have time for. So we need to graph this equation. So when we graph this, first we just want to graph like it's equal to. So let's go ahead and subtract 2x from both sides. I'm in a hurry because this video is almost out of time. We'll get y equals -2x plus 2. I'm going to write it with the x first. So my slope is -2, or -2 over 1. My y-intercept is 2. So I'll graph that y-intercept first, use my slope to find other points, so down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. It is equal to, and so that tells me, oh dear, oops, tells me it's going to be a solid line, not a dotted line. And then we need to decide where to shade. So to decide where to shade, you'd pick a test point. You can pick a point wherever you want. I like to choose the point 0, 0. If it comes out true, we'll shade this spot. If it comes out false, we shade the other. So plug it in, 0, 0. We'll end up with 0 plus 0 is greater than or equal to 2, which is false. And so we'll shade this side. The end.